Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Healing Conversations with Dr. Carlos Warter and Gertrude Mache. Our conversation today is called Return to Innocence. Hello, Dr. Carlos. How are you this week?
Hi Gertrude, how are you? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Return to Innocence. What is happening in the world today, and why have we picked this topic?
I have a feeling that we have totally forgotten what we are. And our mind needs to return to a place in which innocence prevails and not these convoluted situations in which an escalation is being risked to the survival of the human species. When we see the words of our, so to speak, leaders and how easy they raise the tone, inventing the possibility of nuclear war, I feel shocked. I feel that the disrespect for human life has reached such a level, and the respect for human ego has replaced it in such a way that our minds operate only in the quantification of situations and not the qualification of what it means. To me, innocence is a state of mind that is not rewarded in the world. It is only rewarded when we content ourselves with information that leads us to an activity of the mental machinery that we call knowledge, that not necessarily is essential knowledge, but is a knowledge of things. And we get rewarded by that. And I think we need to stop, take a deep breath, and recalibrate what the purpose of living is, not the purpose of doing or the purpose of having, but the mere purpose of being. And to me, that requires a stop in the accelerated external motions as well as a stop in the internal motions, which distract us from essence.
So we have moved away from who we truly are as human beings. We're no longer human beings, but we're human doings by the sound of what you're saying.
And
We're
human havings.
havings, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about how
And it's
much you can get.
exactly. I tell my students, intend to become a go-giver, not a go-getter. But every rule in our modern society, which the only thing that it has of modern is more and more and more weapons of mass destruction in the hands of unstable individuals, such as the heads of states of so many places, that because of egotistical ambitions are causing demise and death. What's happening in Europe after World War II, I thought it would never happen again. And it is happening. A country has invaded a sovereign nation. And this week, once again, in the Nobel Prize of Peace Committee, it showed that the Nobel Prize is given for political agendas and not for peaceful humanitarian agendas. I had a candidate or a couple of candidates for this. Navalny, which is in prison, which has dared in Russia to speak up and has been intended to be assassinated. He has been imprisoned. He has been separated from his family and from his people. No, he did not get the Nobel Peace Prize. Neither did the President Zelensky from Ukraine, which has led a defense of his country and a recovery of certain taken away territories. Also, they gave them to an Ukrainian and to a Russian human rights organization, but it's not an individual, and it's a shadow organization, so that the Nobel Prize in Oslo can say, yes, we are supporting human rights, but not in the exemplification of human beings which put their life on the line. Yes, a prisoner of war or prisoner of, of human rights, prisoner of conscience, the man from Belarus, which is in prison, was awarded a third of the price. But you know, it is so other agenda. It is not honoring the example of what human beings do. It is those organizational shadows that take place. And that's another example of lack of innocence. It's an example of manipulation.
That's interesting. So the spirit of giving is fading in our societies.
Painfully
Everybody
so.
is out to get as much for themselves as possible. That whole sense of community, of us, of we is non-existent in most countries right now.
No,
And
it
you know,
is
I always
totalitarian
hmm?
organizations and individuals which are hidden away in roles, but not in exemplary actions.
So it's just the titles that they hold, the labels that are stuck to their names, but not what they are actually physically doing.
Exactly. I was even surprised years ago when Obama got the Peace Prize. And I asked myself, what has he done for peace? He has been elected for a few months. And he got the Nobel Peace Prize. Anybody with honor would have not accepted it because there was nothing that he had done. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And yet he received it. And in receiving, we're very good. In giving, we're not so good.
So what is the solution, Dr. Carlos? How do we return to innocence?
I think we need to learn and relearn to meditate, to go to that aspect of our mind which is pure, which is not validated by activity, but is not alleviated by the fact that because it did something wrong, it corrects it. But it is pure, it is innocent, it is in essence, in essentia, in the basic functioning of the love of life itself. And that is meditation, that is contemplation, that is breathing. We have one common denominator among all of us, which is the breath. If you've ever seen a person dying, the will to try to have another breath is dramatic. We need to not only hold on to that breath, but to share it. And to share what you and I do together here, we share our breath together in these conversations. And that is called a conspiracy of breathing, a conspiracy of breathing together. And it comes from the word conspiritus, which means with spirit, because the breath is spirit. We take our breath for granted. We waste our breath, and therefore we cannot return to a place that is so urgently needed in this world of inner silence.
And that's the solution to these wars, because really peace begins with each and every one of us.
Exactly. And peace is the key to transcendence, and it's also the key to living. We need to experience the place of peace. We need to shift and transform the ability to experience living so that the things that we constantly try to change begin to clear up by the grace of living itself. And for that, I feel we need to change the altitude from where we look at life and the attitude, how we relate to others in life. We are so entitled. I see it with the younger people, but not only the younger people. We're all entitled. We think we deserve. We think it is owed to us another day of life. And that nobody can have that certainty. So all that it elicits for me is waking up in the morning and having gratitude. Gratitude for another breath. Gratitude for another day of living. And from there, I can concentrate in my work, which is basically dedicated to what we're speaking about, to bringing about an awareness from where we can become, like I defined myself the other day. Somebody asked me, who are you? I said, I'm an aspiring person to become a human being. I want to really fulfill in this lifetime the discovery of what it really means to be human. Not like people say, just human and they make mistakes. Yes, we all make mistakes, but that is not our quality. That's not our characteristic. Our characteristic is that we are given a place and a time to evolve from a mere survival entity to an integral conscious entity. And through that, every human being and every society has phases of evolution, phases of development. And what we need to aspire is to have a global vision, something that is not progressive versus conservative or conservative versus archaic, but global.
I love that. So for the ripple effect to go across the cosmos, for it to touch each and every single country, we live in a complex world with different cultures, different languages, different circumstances. How do we bring that to being?
Well, you have said it so many times in your African cosmology. Before we are countries, before we're family, we are. We're human. And there is no difference between one human and another human. We're about 8 billion of us in a species that resists to see itself as a species and thinks of itself as each one being so important. I am not. I am not that important. I am a transient shadow between two breaths, the breath that we call the first inspiration and the last exhalation. And we begin to see ourselves as that, then all this ambition that we are bombarded with to have to become something. We don't ask children, who are you? We ask, who are you going to be when you grow up? You already are, my child. You don't have to be. Maybe you can learn to serve. You can learn to do something that serves others. So ambition is a level of development, but it's not the only one. And in this world, we see President Putin and his ambition to recreate the empire, the Russian Empire or the Soviet Empire. That's the same thing, ultimately. Is there's something else that needs to emerge, which is devotion, which is love. Love as the recognition, devotion for life. And with devotion, we can have direction and determination. And with determination, we can make holy, sacred, and consecrate our life for the betterment of humanity. And that will give us the so desired liberation, the liberation of the spirit, the liberation of the soul into transcendence. Because this is a spiritual adventure. This is physical existence having a spiritual adventure.
So give us some practical steps. Let's say, for instance, one of our listeners is tuned in and is saying, so where do I begin? What is the first step for my return to innocence? Walk us through
First
that
is
process.
recognition. Recognition. Where do I stand? What do I live for? What do I want? Have I ever asked myself, what is my calling? And that's a question to start. What am I here to express? Not what was I told in the domestication process of my childhood that I had to begin to do, but what is my calling? What is the message that wakes me up every morning and says live? And from there, what elicits itself is love. Love for life, not love for having things in life. You know, it is so erroneous and it is so clear at the same time to see that all this information that we fill our heads with is transient. That the information that was customary when I was growing up is not even not so important anymore, much less 100 years ago. much less the knowledge that a middle-aged individual, not from middle age this lifetime, but from the Middle Ages, we see we have evolution, as I said before. We have the Muslim world, which is 1400 years old, and it behaves exactly as the Christian world in the 15th century was behaving. The same habits, the same killing, the same censorship. What happening in Iran, and that the women's movement in the world is not supporting it in the measure that it could, reflects to me a lack of love. Women in America have the Me Too movement. How many people of the Me Too movement have celebrated the young Iranian women which are taking off the hijab and saying, my hair is beautiful, it was God-given, why should I have to cover it? For what illusory, suppressive, pseudo-religious, because if it's religious it should bring to unity, and it doesn't bring to unity. So what would I say to people? Begin to question, begin to understand that what has been imposed on us has nothing to do with innocence, has only to do with a factory-made product that can be monetized, that can be sold and given data. And that's what we are. We spoke about this in the digitalization of this society. It's all about being sold. So we are now not enslaved by other merchants of terror. We are enslaved by data, and we want to be known and we want to be liked. But do we like ourselves? And that's the other question that we need to ask ourselves. How much appreciation, gratitude, understanding do I have for the gift of living?
So social media plays a huge part in our way of being. Technology has connected us, has united us, but has also created this need to be liked, this need to find validation outside of ourselves. How do we navigate that space?
We return to technology of the sacred, meditation, contemplation, adoration, love, consecration. Those are words of action that we need to begin to remember and to become seriously involved, because all this technology will pass and more modern technology will come, and all this tremendous advance will be as advanced as not writing on stones and writing on papyrus and papers. Today we write in the internet. And then maybe we will be having teleportation and telekinesis and telepathy, and we won't be needing the mediums that we're so proud of and exploiting in a dramatic way. And look, technology in the stock market is doing a roller coaster. One day it's up, one day it's down. And in the means of this last year, it's been down. People are losing money and assets in the fascination of not the eternal values of self, but the intrinsic pseudo values of advancement. There is progress, they say, but to me, progress is relating, loving, being connected. That progress has been left behind because it can't be sold as fast as a set of information. We need to return to the silence of our brain, the wavelengths that are harmonious, the silence of our mind, and the beating of our heart, which really says, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm still here. And it could sound poetic, and it is poetic because poesis means creation.
That is so beautiful. Now, let me take you back a step to something you said earlier with regards to our sense of entitlement. I know we see it a lot in the youth, but we see it a lot in ourselves as well.
Yes.
Where does that sense of entitlement come from? How can we become more aware of how we are being, and how can we get out of that sense of entitlement?
You know, the ancients used to say, live, seize the moment, and remember it could be the last. So the consciousness of what human beings are the most most afraid of is the consciousness of dying. And we don't ask that question. What is going to happen once this show is over? We fear it, so we ask other questions. What can I do? Where can I go? How much can I get? What should I have? Etc. But I remember that I have no guarantee to be here tomorrow. So carpe diem, seize the moment, live today. And if we live today, we don't send our children to war. We don't send our people to death because we don't know what's going to happen to them, and we don't want to lose anybody. And when I say our people, I see the Ukrainians and the Russian as my people. I'm not Ukrainian, I'm not Russian, but I'm human. And they also don't want to go to war for false idealism, for false reasons. And for generations and millennia, we have sacrificed our youth for the conquest of empires that have no meaning. And where have they gone? Where are the Greek of Alexander the Great? Where is the Roman Empire? Where are the European empires? Unfortunately, some still hold a crown on their head, as we discussed it in other moments. But what power do they really have? What significance? What is the quality of life versus the quantity of life? Where are the index of happiness being calculated? There are some countries in Asia, Laos is one of them, that computes the smile of their aged people and their children more than the number of monetary units that can be achieved and acquired in one period of time. And as we've spoken many times, we are in a renaissance, in a consciousness renaissance. We call it a psychedelic renaissance, and the word psychedelic means unfoldment of the soul, not the substances that people take, even though they're also called that way. But in this unfoldment, in this reawakening, the value of living is beginning to be reconsidered, and that's important.
I like that. The value of living, things that we take for granted on a day-by-day basis.
Yes.
Absolutely awesome. So what are your parting thoughts to our listeners today with regards to the return to innocence?
Pay attention to your breath, pay attention to that which has no heaviness in the mind, but has space. And smile. And what I mean by smile is this: SM, space migration; I, intelligence increase and life extension. SMI with a dot, LE. Space migration, intelligence increase, and life extension. Live well while you have it, while it's given, while the gift is here. And love. Love, and my definition of love is the recognition of the same consciousness in this one as in that one.
Absolutely beautiful. We are reflections of each other. Thank you so much, Dr. Carlos, for gracing us with your presence and your wisdom today. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. We'll be back again next week with yet another amazing interview. Have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Dr. Carlos, thank you again for the interview.
Thank you so much.
Bye for now, everybody.